Coming to you live from my brother's apartment where the Wi-Fi is good. No, we're not at TIAA Stadium. No, we're on WrestleZone. What's going on, everybody? I am Kevin Kelm. That is Dominic D'Angelo. This is your WrestleZone post show for AEW Double or Nothing. All Elite Wrestling presented their first no fans pay-per-view. Dominic, this was a wild one. This was a wild one that may divide a lot of different fans for a lot of different reasons. This was this way they ended it was kind of crazy. We have fans joining us. If you're with us live, you can get your comments on screen. Don't forget to share the link, or you stink. If you don't share that link, you will suddenly start to smell bad, and it's because you're not sharing. And sharing is caring, and not sharing is smelling like whatever that icebox is going to feel like when one half of Pride and Powerful comes out of there. This was a wild pay-per-view. Dominic, just your overall thoughts here. We'll get your match rating in a little bit. We'll get the ratings. We'll do the 1 to 10 if you're with us. But what are your immediate thoughts as AEW Double or Nothing went off the air tonight?
Not a decent show. It was a decent show.
Oh wow.
Up to maybe good. But overall, there were some highlights. Don't get me wrong. I thought 2 matches pretty much stole the show. I'm even going to say 3. I thought the stadium. I told you off air. I thought the stadium stampede was. I don't know how I feel about it yet, but
I'll say this: I thought it was the best match on the show.
Really,
and for a lot of different reasons. So let's just get into it. This is AEW's first pay-per-view with no fans. This is presented in a very unique, similar fashion to what WWE is doing, where they're utilizing facilities that they own to produce their events, just like we saw WrestleMania presented at the Performance Center, and then used a nearby set to do the Boneyard matches and different things like that. AEW felt the same way to use Daily Place, the amphitheater, which is adjacent to the TIAA Stadium, owned by the Jacksonville Jaguars. The Khan family owns AEW, so why not use all of the facilities you have? They did a little bit of this a few weeks ago on TV. It got rave reviews, and then since then they announced the Stadium Stampede. We're supposed to, around this time, we were supposed to get Blood and Guts, a big cage match with the Inner Circle versus the Elite, but we did not get that. We got something different, and the Stadium Stampede match a lot of times reminded me of what WWE was trying to do with Money in the Bank a few weeks ago. The Money in the Bank match took place at WWE's headquarters, and it turned into kind of like a long 40-minute comedy wacky race match. And I thought we would likely get to that term here, where a lot of different jokes would happen. And I would say that I thought that match was really, really fun. I didn't think it was the best match ever, the Money in the Bank one. And I feel the same way about this, where I felt like I didn't feel like I was cheated in any way with this main event. This felt like a main event. It was big. Everything about it was huge. There was a bunch of different jokes. If you enjoy comedy wrestling, you got the biggest comedy wrestling match you could think of. They're doing Northern Light suplexes from one end zone to the next. They're doing every football joke you could think of. The big team intros, the pyros, the cheerleaders are there, a little bit of the band. They're giving the Judas Effect elbow to the team's mascot. They're fighting at the bar. They have a horse. This reminded me of, in terms of comedy in a wrestling way, of Blazing Saddles, in the sense of like those farce movies that Mel Brooks would have a dozen jokes in every 30 seconds. This is, in terms of wrestling comedy, there were so many visual gags in this. There was a pinfall was reviewed, and they had to go into the tent to review the pinfall. And there was a lot in this. This is a pretty funny thing here. Yes, John Lopez saying the Judas Effect was taken by the mascot there. What is the name of the mascot
Jackson
again?
DeVille.
Jackson DeVille. Mm-hmm. Of course, some people always have to jump in and say, FWWE! You got FWWE! So immediately people are going to make their comparisons about this. But we're talking about the main event here, the Stadium Stampede, the Inner Circle versus the Elite. We will cover Brian Cage making his big AEW debut, some other big upsets, and of course the first TNT champion was crowned. And Mike Tyson didn't punch anyone. So that was somewhat of a underwhelming thing. What did you think of AEW Double or Nothing? If you're joining us live, let us know what you think and share the link. You can also subscribe to WrestleZone Radio if you can't watch the whole show. Get it on the podcast. Dominic over there has a lot of cool stuff on there. We have a bunch of different interviews we did recently with Sammy Guevara, John Moxley, Christian. And we have some really, really cool stuff coming up there all the time. So you get bonus interviews that pop up all the time, 4 episodes every single week of WrestleZone Daily. We do them after Raw, after AEW, NXT, and on Tuesdays and Thursdays we do like question-heavy episodes just like this, and pay-per-view pop-up shows like this where we're on right afterwards. So plugs aside, this Stadium Stampede match had a lot of fun in it and ended with Sammy Guevara getting the one-wing angel off this big platform through this big spectacle crash pad thing. I enjoyed it. Was it the best non-fans cinematic match of all time? No. And I know the comparisons are going to be made. Was this better than Money in the Bank? Maybe. There's some truth in that. But I'll say this. It wasn't better than the Boneyard match. If you want to get into this cinematic match thing, that is the gold standard right now. And most of that has to do with Undertaker's character and his performance in it and how they utilized him in this match. A lot of people on here, Spencer Worden saying, how about the announcing A+ tonight? JR was great. Jimmy enjoying him. What do you think of the announcing tonight? People have been critical of good old JR tonight. JR had a lot of zingers tonight. I enjoyed him quite a bit.
Yeah, I agree. I thought overall too, particularly how they paid tribute to both Shad Gaspard and please help me with her name. The one Kamira. Thank you.
Hana Kamira.
Hana Kamira.
Don't worry. I had to read the name. I had to read the name 3 times myself.
And
obviously we haven't been on the air since that happened. It's just an awful tragedy with Hana Kamira. It is believed that she took her own life. That isn't confirmed by the family or anyone else there. We're not reporting that, but it's being related to cyberbullying. She appeared on a Japanese reality show on Netflix, and there was some backlash for something she said on the show, some scene, just reality shows where people get in arguments and they film that stuff. And, fans of the show just spiraled off on her, and it drove her off this deep end. You don't know what type of place that person was. And, of course, we all have been following all week the sad, sad case of Shad Gaspar, who was unfortunately lost his life in a riptide wave accident on the shores of California. So a sad week for wrestling, and AEW responding to it. WWE did as well on this week on SmackDown, and they've done it so digitally. So you were expecting some reference to that. They give it a little bit more time. They did actually have the commentators announce on it. That did give them kind of time to reprogram the show before they went to this pre-film match. And just so you know, this match was not live. I don't think you could do this match live. You would have a lot of dead time switching from scene to scene and the different things they did. You had the ring set up at the 50-yard line. This was a real spectacle. And so to kind of bring the crowd down a little bit before you did it and did this big crazy thing, it was cool. Seems like a lot of people liking this. Richard Schwartz saying it was good. Joseph Priestley says that's how you do an effing pay-per-view. TV 14 swearing. Jimmy Gotsia texting said Double or Nothing was great. He gives it an 8. So give us your 1 out of 10 rating here. 10 being great, 1 being the poops. So give it to us here. We'll give ours. I won't give mine away right away here. But definitely, if you're with us live, get your comments on screen here. Alan Crow bringing this up here. Thank you, Alan, for joining us for the first time. Good to see Akira Shida win. Let's bring that up. This was in the card. We're going to bounce around. We won't follow the card in order. We'll just kind of talk about the highlights here. We will talk about the lowlights because there are some on this show, but I want to talk about the good stuff first, and then we talk about the bad stuff, right? Then give me the good news first. I thought this was one of the better matches on the show. Stadium Stampede was so much fun and wild. This was, for me, the best bell-to-bell wrestling. And it didn't stay in the ring. It had all that wild fracas. The whole locker room that wasn't booked on the show was apparently at ringside because you got a lot of presence of them. And this was fun. I liked Akira Shida's just relentlessness, especially with a monster like Nyla Rose. Nyla came off like a monster. Apparently, this was no DQ because they had the kendo stick from the get-go. Most matches like that, did they state that? Did they state this was an ODQ card?
Yeah, they did. They stated it. Yeah, it was on there.
Maybe that just slipped past me here. And I've been watching, but I didn't know when they added that. That just flew past me here. So I knew I was going to miss something. And that was something I missed. And then it took me, all right, no one's getting belt out here. So my favorite part of the no DQ element, people throwing people into the giant, double or nothing poker chips and stuff like that. I loved when Nyla Rose picked up Akira Shida and press slammed her through a poker table, and all the chips and cards went everywhere. And she goes, "Always bet on black," right at the camera. I always thought that was good. It's a fun, corny action movie line. And Akira Shida stood her ground, kept coming back, kicked out from some big moves, landed a bunch of knees, hit that, broke the kendo stick over Nyla Rose's head. The native beast falls, and we have a new AEW Women's Champion. An emotional moment. They didn't reference too much because obviously this is something that happened in the last 24 hours, but they certainly brought up on commentary that there was a spirited connection between Chimera, who recently passed away, and Akira Shida. A big moment, and I would say long-term booking, almost overdue. I think the Nyla Rose thing, you can always put the belt back on her. You can always make her look like a monster. They had Rio beat her in one of the first big matches, and a lot of people kind of shook their head at that. And then they made her a monster, and she wrecked Rio and got the belt. I didn't think Nyla Rose moved the needle for AEW the way they were expecting. That isn't to say that she had a failed championship run. She's certainly a very strong performer. She understands her presence, she understands her role, and she does it pretty well. But I didn't feel like she was the earth mover they needed. But I do think that Hikaru Shida beating her for the title is the right thing. All right, this is a good reset. It has always been a spot that a lot of fans who are checking out AEW the first time say, "Oh, I think the women over in NXT are a little bit better than this. I think they're a little bit more well-rounded." That doesn't say that, AEW doesn't have a strong, women's roster. They just have, I think, a lot of characters that are unrefined. Is that the best way of saying? Like Chris Statlander and Penelope Ford, it was a good match, but I don't know how much the fans connect with this alien character. It's fun, it's cool, but does it shout champion? I don't know. Penelope Ford still seems like a very relatively new, fun wrestler, but isn't polished. There's just a lot of that just not there. Akira Shida, with her pedigree coming from Japan, seems like somebody they can bet on in that direction.
I think immediately, like when I saw Akira Shida, not knowing anything about her, I thought like she's got a star quality to her and a presence about her that really stands out. So, and I agree with you. I did my survey says earlier in the week, and I was questioning how they were going to finish this match, because I was like, Nyla Rose hasn't necessarily had the title for a very long time and hasn't defended it a lot. So like, what is that going to do? How are they going to have that? But you know what? Once it turned out and everything developed, it seemed appropriate and it seems the right thing, because you think about it too. Rio, I don't know if she was the appropriate starter for a champion, but then Nyla you have in there as the powerhouse coming in and getting that dominant force. But like, you can only go so far with that before you have a champion that can kind of has that all around abilities to her. So you have that.
There's no saying that you can't do other dynamic things.
Sure, absolutely, there isn't. But at this point in time, I feel like Shida will be a good way to carry on to that, and then you can come back to Nyla Rose later on.
You can always reboot a monster.
Exactly.
You can exactly. As much as fans say, "Oh, well, once you beat a monster, they're not a monster anymore." I was like, that isn't true, because look at Brock Lesnar.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Like that's a very look at the Undertaker. At one time, he was a monster heel, and you were never supposed to beat him, right? And so I would say this is almost the same case in that regard. I want to bring up the fans, your take on all these different matches here, as I'm trying to post the link for this broadcast here on the show. Tell me about the whole card in general, the look in Daly's Place, the change to obviously the stadium. There was a lot of flash here. Sorry.
That's okay. I feel the setup, the visual of
check that out.
The
pyro entrances.
Yeah. I feel the visual of the setup of the the Stadium Stampede match was really well done. And
don't worry, I think a lot of us are making
right,
a mistake too. Spring Stampede. A ton of us.
But I feel the visual of that was very well done and very well presented. The lighting, especially when they were in the ring and on the field, was really nice. And then the atmosphere was good. I thought, like, overall, it did present that pay-per-view-esque feel for even it being an empty arena. And overall, I thought that was. And back real quick, well, I mentioned 3 matches that really stood out to me. Yeah, the women's title match was one of those 3. So that was in the top 3 for me for that one. But overall, yeah, environment was really well done.
I mean, yeah.
Yeah, and like I feel also too that the pacing of the matches did feel its effect of being in an empty arena though overall, and I think that definitely shined through, and not a positive way for the show overall, but I don't think it totally damaged it either. How long did the show run? Would you say, Kev? Was about 3.5 hours?
About 3.5 hours. I mean, I think a lot of fans, a couple of years ago, you weren't supposed to have a pay-per-view longer than 3 hours unless it was WrestleMania. And I think fans are with the idea now that pay-per-views are going to run over 3 hours, You did have a pre-show. You did have a pre-show that started, I think it was just about 30 minutes, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It was a 30-minute pre-show.
That started about 6:30 Central Time. That featured Private Party versus the Best Friends in a really, really strong tag team match. Just a lot of back and forth action. It felt like it could go either way until the end, and the Best Friends blew it out when they caught Mark Quinn with that big pile driver with the big old Chucky T jumping off the top rope, driving his feet, almost like a Meltzer driver where they stand.
Yeah, it's a great finisher.
Flip. It's a Meltzer driver with a little bit more calculation to it.
It's a great finisher.
I liked Chucky T landing after he drop kicked into the taint of Mark Quinn to bring that pile driver, and then he winked at the camera when he landed, like, "Hey, we got him."
All right.
I thought that match was so good, but the weird thing about that match, and this is always, you do this when you watch pay-per-views, like, oh, why did that match get in this spot? And obviously there was some things done in the middle of the show to give the show levity. To break it up and to talk about the more emotional things. Like when you were going to have to talk about Chad and Kamira passing away. They're going to have to, as they open the show, bring up the essential frontline workers and sweet things that you have to do when you're trying to do these all get together type shows. You have to have ups and downs. I really wish that tag team match was in this pay-per-view main card. I thought it would have really, really helped out the middle, because as we get into the stuff that didn't work on the show, after the show opened with this banger ladder match, it did have some struggles. We'll talk about that ladder match because it was great too. This show was bookended with a really, really strong match at the beginning, some okay stuff in the middle, a match that got really good right before the Stadium Stampede, and there were some just real things that just swung real hard, did not hit. And one of them was this segment involving Shawn Spears and Dustin Rhodes. Dustin Rhodes was laid out weeks ago. We weren't supposed to get him, and then we get Shawn Spears in his tearaway suit that has Tully Blanchard on his crotch. We got to see his butt, and it was playful. It was fun, but it didn't strike me as pay-per-view. It didn't strike me as a big-time thing. It struck me as an angle we could have got on television.
And I love both those guys. Like, Dustin's one of my favorites, and Shawn Spears, I think, is very underrated in regards. And what they did with him on Dynamite with the Shawn Spears news was really well done. But just going into this, it just seemed like almost shoehorned, and then a little too, like, I don't know, just it didn't flow with the show in a lot of ways, I felt. And I felt it just was kind of not. It didn't fit in. It did not fit in. And I love seeing Dustin win a match. I think it's good. But I honestly feel like Shawn Spears could have won that match, and Dustin would have been A-okay. Dustin's somebody I feel almost not like in the same position as a dominant monster as like Nyla Rose, but he's somebody that you can just put back into the top and he'll be A-okay. You can even put him in like the main title picture, and I think
it just didn't make Dustin look good on his big return. It didn't give me the wow. There were some clever things they were trying to do where they kept the camera on Shawn and you had Dustin step into it, and obviously there aren't fans there, and you can tell the crowd to be like, quiet, we want to shoot this thing because there's only 20 people there that we picked out by hand to be the crowd for this, right? They did some clever things, but I thought they got too clever with it. This is something I saw repeat itself on the show. AEW is supposed to be pro wrestling. It's supposed to be pro wrestling for pro wrestling's sake. And pro wrestling is a very, very goofy thing, right? But there were many gaga things they did in this show in terms of, look at this trick we're going to do, and we're going to have this, and we're going to have this, and we're going to have this. I was like, you have all these great wrestlers. And I understand where you want to produce a show with variety and levity and things that like break up the show, but I thought those things were way too focused on, way too highlighted. It took away from what they were trying to do in the ring. And when they didn't do those things and let the story be told, it worked. It worked when she did just, you have Nyla Rose has been whomping her, and now she finally has a real challenger, and here's the challenger. And you've built this up, and it's pay-per-view, and you're going to get your payoff. So the payoffs were big, and they paid off, but in other ways, they didn't. This thing with Spears and Dustin didn't pay off, and it didn't do anyone favors, and it didn't make me feel like I need to see the next Shawn Spears and the next Dustin Rhodes match. I'll want to see him, but I feel less inclined to care if they're going to utilize these guys this way. You know, like you have people like this, and this is what you're doing with them. You know, that was bad.
And I think too, the positioning of Spears in the match, like it was you mentioned like, you know, main event being comedic and stuff like that. They really put him in a comedic type role where I was figuring this could be a pretty good.
And you need characters like that.
You do, but I feel like with how they positioned him on Wednesday and going into this match, if he got the win off of Dustin and like kind of came off as a solid, like he's somebody that you want to have like elevated a little bit more than what he has been, because he's been there and he's been good at what in his role. But I feel like you want more from like to use a talent like that. And I don't think they positioned him very well in this match overall with it. I didn't like I mean, I understand having comedy spots, but we had a lot of comedy spots tonight.
This was a very comedy-heavy show, so that was my thing. I was like, if you're going to do that much fun stuff at the end of the show, right?
Mm-hmm.
Then why did you even do this segment? Like, why? If you were going to be so comedy-heavy on this, what did it add? What did it elevate? And it was supposed to be this big return. It didn't service anything long. It felt like a lot of work for something very short term. Is that fair to say? We're talking more. I think we've been talking about it longer than the match was. So
we had true.
And it wasn't even really that much of a match. It was more just like an angle.
No.
Once again, if you're with us, give us your rating for AEW Double or Nothing. If you're joining live, if you're watching on YouTube, don't be afraid to give this video a big old thumbs up. If you're enjoying it, subscribe to the channel, and of course, check out the podcast as well. We're doing some fun stuff over there. I'm really proud of it here. Moving along, other things that didn't work on the show. We'll talk about some other things that did work. We liked Stadium Stampede. We liked Sheeta winning the title off Nyla Rose. We loved the big vibe at the stadium. Not so much on Dustin Spears. No, it didn't work. Something else that didn't work. This may surprise you. It was a big selling point of the pay-per-view for a lot of people, myself included. I put down the $50. I was excited to see the culmination of the TNT title tournament with one Iron Mike Tyson. So many T's I could tumble down the stairs, right? We were going to get Iron Mike. We got Iron Mike. And he didn't do anything.
He didn't do anything.
I get, if you're going to have Iron Mike Tyson, is it like Cameo? You've seen the Cameo video service, right? Cameo, where you pay someone to like send something in and like they get a special message and they cut a special video for someone's birthday or anniversaries or different things like that. Is there a rate when you bring in Mike Tyson to appear at your pro wrestling event but not wrestle? It costs him this much to punch somebody in the face, and it costs him this much. Because here's the thing: when this show happened, there was an anticipation that Mike Tyson was going to punch somebody.
Yeah.
Am I wrong?
No, they fucking pardon my French. They teased it. Yeah, they teased it. They hinted at it on Dynamite. I'm like, all right, there's something. The way I was going into it, maybe my expectations were super elevated, but I thought something big is going to happen in regards to like making it. You see, I mean, and Tyson set the precedent for that with WWE. He set the precedent for it. So you're bringing him in for a reason. You know what I mean? A big reason. And it was cool to see him.
It's Cody versus Archer. This is months of television you've built up to. Almost the entire pandemic period was rebuilt and readjusted. And when they had to go to Georgia and they had to bring it back to like the whole months of television was rebooked around this one big culminating match, right? And you brought in Mike Tyson for it. Oh, wow, that feels like big time. There is so much hype. This may have been the most hyped match on the show.
It was. There was no doubt about it. Yeah.
But it had the same problem that I felt the Spears thing had on a much grander scale. Okay. We got all these tricks. We got all these things. We got the Murder Hawk from New Japan, and we're gonna have Jake the Snake at ringside, and then he's gonna be jarred. He's gonna call someone a bitch at ringside, and then we got Arn Anderson. Arn Anderson's gonna try and stop the Murder Hawk from doing a move on the top rope, and then Mike Tyson's gonna tell the referee that he can get tossed out, and then he's gonna get tossed out, and then Jake the Snake's gonna bring out his snake, and then Mike Tyson's gonna go up and he's gonna take his shirt off, and it's like, how many times have I mentioned something that happened in the ring? Everything's going on around the ring. And sometimes let's book all the frantic, chaotic energy around the ring, and it'll elevate the ring. Because they did some great stuff in here. They did that press slam over the corner camera. I loved that. It looked really, really cool. And Cody and him had a brawl. This was a long match. Yeah. This was like over 20 minutes, right?
So, yeah, and Kev, I thought too, if you took away all that Gaga that you mentioned,
great match.
You have Larcher.
It took Cody. You had Murdoch kicking out on one.
Yeah.
All right, on Crossroads finishers. He took him 3 of them to beat him down. And you know what? I'll say this. I thought having Archer lose as his big monster, they had him feed him all these people. I was like, I don't know if this is a great idea. Because are you going to have him lose and the big Brody guy, 2 big guys lose that you bring in as monsters and like the guys are going to world beaters, world monster wreckers. You're bringing these 2 big Godzillas and, you're going to have 2 guys that look like David beat the Goliaths, right? I thought maybe one of them was going to lose, right? So I thought Archer losing, I was like, oh, all right. But the way they did it, they didn't make it look easy. He didn't look like he was gooned out, He didn't look like a geek.
Yeah.
So I was okay with that. But you had Tyson there, and he didn't punch anyone out. And he brought in the belt, and we'll talk about that belt.
So I liked it, but we can talk about it.
And there was so many things about this that reminded me of what they had with the MJF match, Revolution. I saw that match. I enjoyed it, but there was just way too much going on that took away from the match itself, the bell to bell. You're getting sports entertainment here. You're not getting a whole lot of wrestling in this. And this is supposed to be a wrestling match for a wrestling title.
Right. It is. You remove all that. To reiterate it kind of again, Archer and Cody are 2 of my favorite stars in AEW. And I was jacked for this match. I thought, and the TNT title being on the line, the inaugural, having Tyson, having that expectation of Tyson getting involved and everything. But then you just had too much noise happening. And it took away from it. I'm sure we'll see these guys tie it up again, and maybe things will be more honed in, but this time it just wasn't there.
This is Cody. Cody is one of your biggest stars in the company. He's one of the top guys that fans can react to. And obviously everything I think you can kind of look at on a curve because there isn't fans and the circumstances are different. What would the reaction be if they did this and that place was filled with 5,000 people? It would probably be huge and very cool. Right?
Yeah.
So there's something to be said for that, and that can be your excuse for everything. But the playing field is level now, so I could say that in some regard. It didn't have that. Oh wow, he's the first TNT champion. He told himself he wouldn't book himself into a championship match. He wouldn't use his powers to do that. He would actually compete with everyone else to earn everything. Put in the work, right? And all those things that Cody did. You didn't get that sense of culmination. It didn't feel. Now it feels like they're gonna have to put in more work for this championship to mean something because it came out of this whole mishigosh.
Yeah.
It was overbooked, overcooked.
You know what, Kev? I almost feel like if you had somebody else in that match where, you're trying to establish a star, somebody like a Darby Allin or even a Sammy Guevara or somebody like that, and they're the first champion, you still have Cody in the mix to win that title and still be still add to the stakes and add to the level of the title that you want it to be at. It's almost like an intrigue. Oh, Cody's going to get it at some point, But I almost feel like it should have been maybe somebody else than Cody in the match to start it off.
A lot of people are texting me here. Scott Chavez saying the Tyson spot fell really, really flat. He didn't like it here. Michael Woodson, let's talk about this. He said the TNT belt is extremely ugly. This belt has a red strap. It has silver plates on it. It has a big bold TNT logo. So wrestling dorks, wrestling geeks, male, female, doesn't matter whatever. Aesthetically, those belts got to look special because you're asking me to pay hundreds of dollars for a replica or at least a toy, or at least look at a championship, and it is symbolically supposed to be this idol that everyone wants to seek out and win. And this is a lot of people are excited with the idea of a championship named after the network you're on. That's very unique. There's some cool details on the title. I noticed one of the plates on the title is the actual Turner Mansion from Turner Network Television, which was like that's a little bit of a detail there. I thought it was cool, but it looks like a WWE championship. It looks a lot like one of the Raw championships. It looks a lot like the WWE championship, the Universal title. It looks a lot like that. And there was some backpedaling on commentary tonight saying that, this isn't done, because of the pandemic. We still have to put some more plates on the title.
Did they say that?
Yes, they did say that. And
wow.
That was one thing that made me go like, that the AEW says they don't want to be reactionary. They want to listen to the fans, right? They don't want to be but you're in a position where you have to be reactionary. If they couldn't finish the title on time, it's a belt. Your belt's got to look like $1 million, even if you bring it out in front of you.
I liked it. I love the belt. I like the look of it. I thought it was it's such a contrast to the
don't
title.
hate it. I don't hate it, but it looks like the Raw Tag Team Championships.
I mean, I can see that, but it also, if you like NWA, kind of looks like their TV title. And it looks like it looks like the Raw Tag Team Championship had a baby with the TV title.
This is the worst one. Corey Wooten with the line of the night. All right, the line has been drawn here, everybody.
Oh no!
This is the best comment of the night. If you're with us live, you got to beat this. If you're with us on the podcast, you got to beat this. Tweet it at WrestleZone.com if you can think of something better. And just for joke purposes, he says, loved the show, but the title looked like a 24/7 title bootleg.
That's rough.
Bootleg. They're bootlegging R-Truth comedy belt?
Oh, that's rough. Come on. The 24/7 title belt looked like they got off a scrapyard and then somehow hammered out the numbers onto it. I love the TNT title. I think it looks great. Yeah, leave it the way it is. That's my opinion.
Okay. Are you sure?
Oh, yeah.
Based on the reaction tonight, are you sure about that?
I'm all right. I'll double down on that. I like it.
All right. Here's the thing. I didn't hate it, but it needs some work. Is that fair?
That's fair. I'll take that.
I didn't hate it, but it needs some work here. So a lot of people are texting in here with different things. A lot of people with the prices they've paid for. A lot of people with the prices they've paid for replica belts. Have you ever gotten one of those the big strap real belts? Have you ever got one of those?
I got some Walmart ones when I was
the toy ones are cool. I'll put those up on the wall.
Yeah.
But I mean, I understand if it's like a trophy and someone, I've seen people get them for bachelor parties and fantasy footballs and stuff like that. But whenever I go to an arena wrestling show, specifically arena wrestling shows, you'll see people with those big, heavy belts, right? And I'm just like, that's a lot to carry all night long.
Yeah, right? How do you carry that around?
Yeah, I know. But then there are fans that love having it. They love having the belt, and that's their thing. There's a buddy of mine, Aaron Kirby. He has in his hallway, I remember I had a dog sit for him years ago. I know this is a diversion. And you would walk down the hallway, and it was all of the belts. He had the big leather straps hanging down. He had all of them.
Damn.
Oh, yeah. And then when he got engaged, he got a tag team title for his wife, Indeed. And I obviously got a ring with her. So I was like, all right, that's awesome. I'll appreciate that. It's a whole other thing.
Yeah, I mean,
getting back to the show. Yeah, getting back to the show though in general here and people's different comments, different takes here on the belt, LFMAO title looks nowhere close to the NWA title belt. WTF? Are you all smoking? Are you all smoking it? You're all smoking something. Well, in these trying times, you have to be smoking something, right? I don't blame you if you are. There's some other underwhelming things on this show. I thought MJF and Jungle Boy was a fine match. I thought it was a fine match. I thought protecting Jungle Boy as a valiant hero, the trade-off of the pinfalls back and forth, and a little bit of that Memphis shine where no, it was almost 50-50 booking, but still a pinfall, a decisive win, and MJF is protected. Did I think it was a barn burner? No. Did I think it should have? Did I think it was in a tough position going on after the ladder match? Heck yeah. But what do you think of MJF moving forward here?
I think it's good. I think having Jungle Boy lose, I don't know about that. But I will say this: this was like my match of the night until the gold title match happened. I liked how the pacing of it. I thought the guys worked really well with one another. They really slugged it out. MJF looked fierce and vicious in it, and I thought Jungle Boy fired right back and kept on that level too. And the way they said it, they kept reiterating that, hey, MJF is pretty much undefeated in AEW. And it almost looked like they were setting it up for Jungle Boy to get the win, just by the vocabulary of the commentators.
Wins and losses. See, that's the
Yeah.
sports-centric thing that they can push, and then you let the characters in the ring get the story over. This was something where I brought up all the other stuff they did where it felt like it was too cooked up. It was too much like somebody else throwing their sauce in there, too many cooks in the kitchen. So this was another case of that, where this was a simple match that did a simple job, but I did think it had a tough time following a match on it before that was significantly better. And let's get into that. Another highlight of the night, the ladder match. The Casino Battle Royal ladder match was the right way to open the show. A frantic match with everyone wanting to get the casino chip at the top. What a great little prop, too. A casino chip you can cash in, and you get yourself a world title shot down the line. You cash in your chips. Oh, play off all the perfect gambling analogies here. We knew we were getting a mystery man in this match. We had several different people stand out in it. Joey Janela was added to replace Rey Fenix, who was injured on Dynamite. A nasty fall he took. Joey Janela wearing tights that were picked out for him by Carol Baskin at her Big Cat Rescue with the cheetah print on him. Darby Allin nearly destroying his legs when he wanted to somehow pull out a skateboard and jump off a ladder and use the skateboard to hurt somebody and crash. This was something where it's like, dude, I get it. You're trying to do skateboard tricks, but you nearly wrecked your knee in the process. Only to be used later on in the match. You saw everyone else get involved. Colt Cabana had different parts in this match. Several. They buried a bunch of different people under stuff, but it was Brian Cage's match. Brian Cage comes out last. The 2-minute intervals. You can do whatever you want with SCU, saying they were going to break up as a tag team. They didn't. You can do all these different things. But this was Brian Cage's match. Brian Cage debuts in AEW. This is one that we've been expecting for a very, very long time. Did not know that Taz would be his manager, which was interesting. And Cage comes out. He's a machine. He wrecks people left and right, goes to Luchasaurus, puts Darby Allin up on a ladder. Now, this was, I wouldn't say completely botched, but the delivery wasn't super there. Put him up on a ladder, take the ladder over your head with Darby Allin on it, press slam him into another ladder outside the ring. It was nasty. It was mean. That was a really, really dangerous thing to do. Ladder matches are dangerous in general. But Darby Allin is just a guy that just doesn't. I don't know if you offered this guy to do any. Like, we're going to do an entire match on top of a Hell in a Cell, and we're going to throw you off the Hell in a Cell. Yeah, I'll do it. He has that Mick Foley, what does this match need? I'll go there type switch. And it shows. And it shows again in terms of like his willingness to do this with Brian Cage. And Brian Cage is now a guy who's set to take on the AEW champion. What do you think of Brian Cage? What do you think of this ladder match? It was wild. I loved it. It was my second favorite match on the show.
Was it? See, I loved Brian Cage and how they debuted him. I thought they did a very good job with that. Overall, like the match, the style of the match and everything, and the setup. I didn't know exact. I was kind of like Orange Cassidy in this regards. I didn't know the exact rules of the match going into it, so I kind of liked learning as I went.
Tony, Tom,
I didn't have to ask Tony.
Khan
I thought that moment was great. But figuring out that it was like a Royal Rumble almost entryway, I really liked it going into it. Then I was like, "Ooh, this is kind of cool," and it went pretty fast in that regard. I did not like comedy spots in it though. A little bit of comedy in there where it's just like Orange Cassidy, where he's like standing on the ladder that's just laying down, reaching, or not knowing or not opening the ladder, and then Marco Stunt with his little spot. I just thought kind of that stuff was a little unnecessary. But
it's one of those
overall,
things where if you did that in front of a live crowd, they would have ate it up.
yeah,
You
you're
know,
probably right. You're probably right. But it's like,
and this is one of those things where you don't know it until you try it. You're like, oh yeah, but if there was a crowd there, you would have heard a laugh, right? So there's something to be said for that too. I liked it. I thought it was wild and violent. I love the idea of them, if they're going to neutralize Brian Cage after he was introduced as this monster, bury him underneath a bunch of different wreckage, and then he emerges from it like a Terminator, and he comes into the ring and wins everything. I enjoyed it. Other people enjoying Orange Cassidy and his kind of laziness, and he doesn't want to win the match. Okay, I have to do this, Okay, they're having him talk a lot more.
they are, they are, and I do enjoy I love Orange Cassidy. I feel how what he did with Ray Phoenix the other night was awesome. That match itself, and then that fire that he showed with Pac weeks and months back, and then you go into this. It's almost like I wanted to see that competitive edge again because he showed such a great fire on Wednesday.
But it's just something you got to share sparingly. You know what I mean? So I understand the separation of that. Like you can only do it now and then when it doesn't matter nearly as much. Let's get into the title match here. Jon Moxley versus the Exalted One, Mr. Brody Lee. And they had the security lined up with their face masks in the middle of the ring, so you could break them up, and he came out with the title, and you had all these other elements. It was one of the things where I was like, is this another thing where they're gonna have way too many people involved in a match? That's what I was worried about here. But thankfully they just let Moxley and Brody do their thing, wreck each other all around the ring, beat the snot out of each other, and then the DDT through the walkway platform, a la Taz and Bam Bam Bigelow back EC-Dub. A little bit of AEW. I thought this was nasty. One guy emerges with the blood on him. I didn't think Moxley needed to bite a bloody forehead during a pandemic.
Well, that's a good point. I mean,
obviously, that's something we've seen in wrestling before. Moxley's a guy who loves gnarly, violent wrestling, right? And we had him doing the elbows and doing the DDT. He did like a couple DDTs, almost like Archer and Cody. And Moxley pulls out the win. It was one of the things where I thought maybe it was too early to do this with Mr. Brody Lee. And you had Moxley kind of neutralize all the other threats that could be involved in the match and different stuff like that along the way. I thought it was a good match. I thought it was I didn't think this match was going to be bad, but I did think it was one of those things where it's like this is where AEW kind of booked themselves into a corner. And the only advantageous thing they did was Brody stole the title. I'm proclaiming myself the champion. And that was kind of clever and neat. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the match. I didn't think it was going to be bad, but I was like, there's some hurdles you got to get around here because you can't come out of this making Brody Lee look bad. He still has to look strong. You have a whole roster of people that need to look great, and Moxley's still your biggest star, and you're not going to take the title off him. But all things considered, the smash and crash of it kind of helped, and they did just enough stuff after they went through that platform to make it mean something. I do think maybe going through two platforms on one show is a little bit much. Because you do it later on. Yeah. But overall, fun. This was fun. The Stadium Stampede ended the show after that. But I will say this, overall, there is this kind of like, you did all this crazy stuff, but I don't think you're going to go to the regular AEW fan, in a couple of years, and they're going to say this show was the best one, and you could say that the no fans element definitely affects it because they are that is their secret sauce. The idea that they have this male 18 to 34, like it's a rock concert audience that chants for everything and responds and laughs and all that stuff. But this is something where I don't notice it too much on Dynamite, but I definitely noticed it on a pay-per-view that, the fans are this big hurdle you're going to get over. So maybe you're grading from a negative when you already start. And that isn't fair, but it's just the circumstances you're in. They use a lot of different tricks to try and make you forget about that. I just think they use too many tricks. And if they just focused on the stuff they got, it would have been good. This is the first time where I saw an AEW show and I was like, oh, you guys built this up and did it really good, but then you just overcooked it. You kept it in the oven too long. And you just could have let it be simple. It felt like there's just too much noise in it. I'm giving the show a soft 7. 7 out of 10. It's a fun show. It is a show that does make you think $50 pay-per-view since we're cultured to like $10 a month. with the WWE Network. I've been talking about this for weeks. I know there's been no reporting, there's been no inclination of it, but we got to talk about this. Is this $50 pay-per-views? How do you feel about that in 2020?
I think it's okay. I do. They don't do a lot of pay-per-views AEW, so
UFC is still doing pay-per-view. You know what I mean?
Sure. And like AEW has what, 4 or 5 pay-per-views a year? I think it's fine.
Yeah. I mean, if they were doing like almost like, hey, we're going to do a pay-per-view every 4 months, and then here are some other shows we can do on a BR Live or something like that.
And free. You know what? It adds to. I think it kind of elevates the intrigue of watching a show. You're like, okay, I'm putting $50 down. It's going to be big. But when it kind of doesn't, like, you can't have too many shows like this, to be honest. If you're going to have that price point.
Was this a $50 show? I think that's a fair question to ask.
I would pay 40 maybe. If I went back, and you know what? I didn't get a chance to say this. Moxley and Brody Lee was my match of the night. I liked it. I thought their chemistry was great. I thought the way they slugged it out and the way they paced the match, fast-paced, but like people got their spots in it, and I think it put Brody Lee on a very good level, because we were questioning, is Brody Lee, is he what we want? Is he who, like, and I thought this match put him in that position to not only be there, but it will launch him forward as long as they progress his character. I think he's on the right track, and I think they succeeded in that aspect. Moxley just looks like a badass every time he goes out there, but particularly in this match in my taste, I thought he really showed.
Was there. Yeah, that is absolutely true. I did get that.
So before that it was going to be MJF and why am I blanking? Jungle Boy on there was my match of the night, but this one took it over. I thought it was really well done, and it added. We asked about that, like, too much comedy for me. This didn't have really any comedy in it, did it? It didn't have any comedy, so no. I just liked it. But yeah, price point wise, is this a $50 show for me? No,
what show is?
No. That's true. That's true.
I mean, unless it's like a WrestleMania or Royal Rumble, and that's one of those things where WWE has the advantage of kind of setting a standard for you, and other people saying, "Oh, WWE sucks." Well, I mean, if you told me the Money in the Bank show was $50 before it aired, I'd be like, eh. But afterwards, if you told me that show was $50, I'd be like, okay, maybe not 50, So there's something to be determined by that, especially now when people are thinking more about what they spend on entertainment every month. If you tell me I'm spending the $10 every month or $15 in HBO Max, I bring up that. I've been bringing this up for a while. AEW, they're not owned by Warner Media, but they're deeply involved with them on 2 different platforms for them, with BR Live, which is where the pay-per-view content is coming out. And BR is a sports platform for different events. They have some Premier League football on it. They have some various different things. But TNT, where they broadcast their TV shows, is also owned by Warner Media, which is launching HBO Max. And HBO Max is going to come out on the 27th. It's got DC superheroes on it. It's going to have that Snyder cut of Justice League that you've been seeing, tweeted about all week long. If you told me that AEW was going to be on a digital platform I'm paying $15 a month for, and their brand is going to be right next to Superman and Batman and Adult Swim and Rick and Morty and Game of Thrones, the rub is there. You know what I mean? Like, the rub is really, really there, and would give them, I think, a really, really good way to. You get the rub of HBO. Then HBO is that, it's not television, it's HBO. And I wonder, is there just something in those deals? Obviously, if I'm people text me about the price of pay-per-views, like John Lopez says, I spent $100 watching Mayweather fight. Those are big boxing matches. They know you're getting a party together for that. Like, they know what they're getting there. You can't get a party together in a pandemic. Right now. That's what I'm saying. Like, I was talking to 2 different, we had a thread for all the guys on WrestleZone, and I had a thread of my different wrestling buddies. There was like 6 different people in each one, and they each spent like $50. So I was like, all right, maybe you got a lot more fans to buy the show because everyone's spread out individually, or that drove people not to buy the show, and so somebody said on what the show's gonna be like, but it's also worth noting, we're not going to find out how many people bought the show because AEW is not a publicly traded company, or at least those numbers won't come out easily. Is that fair to say? We do know a lot of different things about the show. I gave it a soft 7. I need to know your rating, Dominic. I know you've enjoyed AEW quite a bit.
Yeah,
I'm not testing your loyalty to those 3 big letters down in Jacksonville, but it does not seem like you're feeling the same way about this show as maybe some other big AEW, WWE shows. You're not feeling the same thing. What's your rating? 1 out of 10? Give it to me. I need it.
If am I grading on a curve for an empty arena, or is this no?
Sure,
curve?
It's still 1 to 10. Maybe that empty arena makes you start just a little bit short of 1, or maybe you're a -2 or something like that. Sure.
Okay, if I'm factoring in empty arena, I'm with you 7, even 7, because if the crowd was there and that same vibe still happened from it, I would give it below a 7. I would, but if I'm grading on a curve, it's the 7 with the empty arena. So you made a lot of valid points too. Like some of those spots that I did not necessarily like, they could have translated over if you had a crowd there, but I think a lot of those fell flat because.
All right, people are feeling me on this HBO Max thing. If you're AEW and you're doing business with Warner Media and TNT,
there you go. Yeah.
I have someone text in here. I would subscribe to HBO Max for $15 to get AEW pay-per-views. How much are you spending on the production of an AEW pay-per-view as compared to a single episode of Game of Thrones that you're going to be doing, or the $20 million that you're going to be putting in there too? And if you can get a couple 100,000 people that watch Dynamite every week to spend $15 on HBO Max, I think there's some crossover on people that like Adult Swim and the HBO shows. Like you want that 18 to 34 demographic, I would do it, or at least get something on there. Get something.
Sure. Yeah.
Give me Dynamite episodes on there.
Kev, did Cody's press conference on Wednesday, did they mention anything about? Did anybody ask that question in regards to that?
No one asked about it. And I know we were told shortly before tonight's show ended that there were media scrums.
Yeah.
AEW has done these after their big quarterly pay-per-views. They did them in Chicago for All Out last August. I don't know if we did some for Revolution, but they did do some online tonight, and we will have those available for you guys in some form, either video or audio on WrestleZone in the next few hours. Monday morning for sure, or Sunday morning, based on when you guys are getting us. See, Sunday is like when I think pay-per-view night is. AEW is doing the Saturday night thing, so that's a different thing too. Other people text in saying they give it a 7.5, so people are kind of in the realm that we're talking about.
We're in the same realm,
yeah, we're in the same realm here. All right, moving ahead, we will be covering everything going on with WWE. WrestleZone Daily will be live after Monday Night Raw. We'll be on Tuesday afternoon, and then you can join us after AEW and WWE NXT. And then Thursday afternoon, we kind of wrap up the week. You are busy also on the WrestleZone radio podcast feed with Survey Says, kind of like your solo one-show focused thing. WZ Daily, I'm bouncing around the whole the place. I didn't even go down through the whole card here in like one singular thing here. But Survey Says you're drilling in the concept. You're getting it really, really tight. You're looking at your points and you're making them done.
Thanks. Yeah, it's cool to do because it's just like I watch a show and hey, I just give my immediate reaction, run down just break down some intricacies that I think really stand out and make the product itself stand out, whether it's AEW, whether it's MLW, NWA. I haven't gotten a chance to necessarily do that since they haven't really had too much new content come out. Here and there, I'll do a WWE show too, but it's mostly I focus on those 3 other brands a lot of the times. But,
because we talk enough about WWE, it's good to have.
Sure, yeah, I feel like that stuff needs to get covered, and because it's an alternative, like all that stuff's an alternative. If you don't, necessarily a big WWE fan, then you can try to check. Before we sign off
for the night here, Dominic, I know you have the scoops on MLW on BN Sports. They're a big brand. They were the one that started this whole let's get Mike Tyson in a wrestling ring.
Right. They were very much so.
And then he showed up in AEW. I think AEW came and scooped him in with a big check. Maybe that's what they did.
They swooped in,
and MLW was talking about that.
Mm-hmm.
And then this week, Court Bauer, former WWE head creative, he started Major League Wrestling. They've done some big business and started to do the pay-per-view events, and they're on BN Sports. He was teasing some big announcement. Now, I'm testing you, Dominic, because I know, to be clear, Dominic writes and produces different content for MLW's website that kind of looks at the specific wrestlers. Maybe maybe you've held your Pittsburgh gear up against a door or two in the MLW halls. What is this big announcement? How big is it? What is you don't have to tell me what it is. I'm doing the 1 to 10. I'm doing the 1 to 10.
You're doing a 1 to 10.
All right, give me the 1 being the gobbledygooker. Okay.
Okay.
All right. 10 being it's going to blow my mind.
All right.
Do you know what it is? And if you do know what it is, can you give me the 1 to 10? I'm not gonna test you.
You don't have to. You know why? Because I am in the dark. And guess what? He does this. Court does it to a lot of the talent. I interviewed Alexander Hammerstone, and he's like, the crazy thing about Court is he does not let anybody know what's going on. He's like, if stuff will come up, and we'll be like, wow, how did that happen? So I am on the outside looking in, just like you, Kev, and it's exciting because it's neat. Something, and I always say these on the survey says that something I love about MLW is like there's always news that pops up every day. We always get a press release every day from MLW.
The thing is, the world of MLW never stops.
It never stops. It's the rise of the Renegades. We're doing good. It's good stuff.
Like I haven't listened to a couple of their podcasts. One more question here, a question or two if you have them before we get off and we sign off for the night. Tommy B texting, great fan of the show. Thank you so much, Tommy. He says, any news on Roman's future? Roman Reigns of WWE, big name superstar that pulled out of a huge match with Goldberg at WrestleMania and made it very, very public that as someone who had recently battled leukemia, that he did not want to compete. Now, a lot of people thought, because he's leukemia, maybe that puts his immune system at risk, and he doesn't want to risk the different things that are going on with the COVID-19 epidemic. We saw a lot of people around the ring, and AEW made a great point of saying that they tested people. People question whether WWE's testing policy is public or known, or are they doing screenings? They've said they've done screenings, so that's all to be debated. That's another show. Roman pulled himself out saying he doesn't want to take the risk, and he clarified weeks ago after WrestleMania that in promoting the Undertaker Last Ride documentary with TMZ, that the reason he didn't do it is not because of his immune system, because he just had recently had twin sons. He just had 2 twins born, and he doesn't want to risk that, and he wants to make things clear. I think Roman is Teflon against this. I think when he comes back, he's a huge superstar. I don't think he's in any bad spot. I
don't think so either. I feel too.
It's not going to be at the top of the card when he comes back.
I also think that I did hear that like it's just kind of unknown with Roman when he's supposed to come back. So a lot of the times you'll see this mixed feedback that you get from WWE. Sometimes they'll mention him, and then other times he's the name that shall not be mentioned. And then, but you just saw him on The Last Ride. Yep. You know, a main factor on The Last Ride since he competed with.
Furthermore, you didn't just see him; he was put out there to promote it.
Yeah, he's still around.
He's still under contract. He's still going to get paid. They're still selling Roman T-shirts on the website. Everyone's like, "Oh, they hate Roman. They hate Roman." They never. Just because they didn't bring up his name doesn't mean they hate him. Because if you don't bring up someone's name and then they show up, isn't that surprising? And people love surprises.
And heck, you don't want to keep promises you can't keep either. Vince is not into that. Like he does not. If you can't deliver on something, Vince is not gonna throw anything out there, or will do his best not to have anything out there. So it doesn't necessarily mean that Roman's in the doghouse. But it doesn't. I think he's positioned fine. We gotta wait to it's like everything is unknown right now. Roman's status probably likely unknown.
Well, one of the biggest stories of the year with WWE and wrestling in general was, of course, the fallout of COVID-19 that has financially impacted both companies. Now, AEW, as far as we know, has not released any wrestlers. Now, some of the deals they have with wrestlers are based on dates. Some of the deals they have with wrestlers are based on contracts. That's why you've been able to see some wrestlers appear in different promotions and wrestle for different things. So the deals vary based on the individual talents. The majority of them, though, are locked in, with specific exceptions, like you've seen Chris Jericho and Jon Moxley wrestle in New Japan Pro Wrestling. Other lower tier wrestlers have been sporadically used and come back in and out and are still wrestling on independent shows pre-pandemic. So the deals vary quite a bit. And I bring that up because this question comes in from Anthony Diaz Jr. He says, who do you foresee being the new addition to AEW? Well, we saw that tonight with Brian Cage. And I'll say this, I don't see many new wrestlers specifically from WWE or big name independent talents that have already established their names in, say, an Impact or a Ring of Honor or a PWG or even New Japan coming over. If you do see new additions with AEW, the biggest new one obviously is Brian Cage. He will be the focus. He will be a big part of television for the next few weeks, and they're going to build him up to take on Jon Moxley, and I think that match will happen before All Out. You're not going to save that until September. It'll be Brian Cage in terms of the new guy on the block, the new monster. And it's also another thing about AEW is it's a new company. There's still a lot of people that you don't know a lot about in this company. There's still a lot of characters you need to develop. If you've been watching wrestling for 10 or 5 years, you know who Brody Lee is, so that's a big thing. But to some people that just watch AEW, they don't know who Brody Lee is, and they don't know who a Darby Allin is, and they're still getting used to those characters. So there's something to be said for that. I don't see many of those guys that got let go from AEW or WWE a few months ago coming over right away. I just don't. I don't think the spots are there. They don't have a second brand. They're not big enough to launch a second brand really right now. Dark is not a second brand. Dark is just a second TV show with a lot of parlay over in terms of just here are a couple matches, and occasionally we're going to give you like a really barn burner matching. Most of them are squash matches. Nothing wrong with that. And sometimes they give you one that you weren't expecting. So like a couple weeks ago, I'm sorry to forget the wrestler's name, but he stood out quite a bit and hung in there with Kenny Omega in a match they taped in Norcross, Georgia at the wrestling gym of QT.
Alan Angles.
Thank you. And Angles, he hung in there with Kenny Omega, and they gave him a competitive match with Kenny Omega they didn't need to give him. There were several wrestlers that were used during those weeks that AEW taped in Georgia that stood out. And Cody made note of this, that there were several wrestlers that came in, they were tested, they were paid like enhancement talent, they were utilized as enhancement talent, they were not contracted guys, and some of them got on national TV. Most of them were featured on AEW Dark. Sugar Dunkerton is one of those guys, a journeyman independent wrestler. I know him from freelance wrestling. Just a standout guy. A lot of personality, Sugar Dunkerton. So he's been referred to as Pineapple Pete by Chris Jericho. I don't know where that name came from, and you saw him at ringside again tonight. Cody mentioned that some of those guys, I'm not saying it's him, but he seems like he has a good shot since they're talking about him so much, that could get a deal. I like that more. I like the idea of journeyman independent wrestlers that maybe we've heard about here and there, but they're not like a Brian Cage, that get a deal, that get some type of deal, whether even if it's a loose non-committal deal, even if it's just here, we're going to give you these dates and use you for this thing. That's the way I see it. I don't see anyone getting a big money contract outside of a Brian Cage. I don't know what his deal is, but we knew that. We knew that deal for months that he was coming there.
And I'm kind of with you, Kev. You don't want to, and I think Cody said this before in an interview. He does not want to be known as hey, the WWE, we're signing all our friends kind of feel. And
no, because then it comes off like TNA in the mid.
You don't want to get that. You don't want to get that identity. And it's sure you would love to see those stars back in the limelight. Somebody like a Heath Slater or Zack Ryder or Kurt Hawkins or you name it. Like Rusev, maybe you could definitely pass with him. I think if you brought him in, but no, when you bring in these journeyman guys like that guy Baron Black, who I got to interview and stuff like that, he was one of the guys, enhancement talents that they brought in. The list goes on. You can if you even establish those guys, they showed some presence. They got the opportunity to showcase a little bit of their style and their personas on those Dynamite episodes in Georgia, and it's a good platform. Another talent to look out for. Not saying I don't know where he's going, but. Ricky Starks earlier this week announced that he was going to be a free agent. He is a free agent. And, he's somebody that I can't believe has flown under the radar for this long. He's got style. He put that awesome video out. It got waves from Cody and it got a response. It got a response from Cody. It got Lance Archer reacted to it too, teasing that, hey, he could be the guy in the ladder match and stuff like that. It's just,
we're expecting the revolt of what is Dax? How am I supposed to say?
Dax Harwood and Cash Wheeler.
All right, those are. I got to get used to those names.
Got to work on it. It'll be a little bit.
Formerly known as the Revival,
yes,
in WWE, guys that wanted out of WWE for a long, long time, and now are in kind of long, drawn-out legal situations involving trademarks with the WWE. I think that is a problem that's going to bite them in the ass for a long time to come. In this way, they've tried to trademark a handful of things that look vaguely similar to the names they had in WWE or references they made, and then there's going to be legal debates. Do I think they'll be in AEW at some point? Probably, but I don't think they're guys that just want to be in AEW. I think they're guys that really wanted to try and do a bunch of different things. But what are those things to do? Right now, it feels literally the only two wrestling companies you can wrestle in the United States right now at this time are WWE and AEW. And there's something to be said for that. So, if the independents were open and these guys could get out there, they'd be headliners. They'd be headlining every gymnasium with 1,500 people at it.
Too. They'd be making
bank.
And
you'd be making bank doing it as well. So there's something to be said for that. We are continuing the evolving situation of pro wrestling in the coronavirus and COVID-19. A lot of people asking us every single day, when are fans going to be back at the matches? When are fans going to be back in the matches? And the fans not being there seems to have affected both AEW and WWE, with trends affecting television viewership and all these different things. We will have it all for you at WrestleZone.com in the podcast feed. Subscribe WrestleZone Radio on your podcast app of choice. You can get it on your phone, get it on your smart speaker, you can get it on iHeartRadio, TuneIn, all that good stuff. Search WrestleZone Radio on iTunes, any of your podcast apps. It'll be right there. Give us that 5-star review. Okay, and also check us out on YouTube. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. We put this show up there. A lot of different things will pop up there soon. We're gonna experiment with just doing exclusive YouTube-y type things. Thank you for following my hand motion.
It's the dabble.
Someone's done their improv classes. You're doing the yes and thing. I put it out there. You're following me. Dominic, if they want to give you a follow on the Twitter, where do they go, bud?
Yeah, you just go to my name, at Dominic D'Angelo. I got it way back when, so that's just my name, Dominic D'Angelo. Follow me on Twitter.
Your mom. You got it from your mom. You act like you had a pen name. You can follow me on Twitter at Kev Kellum. I do want to thank those of you that tuned into 101 WKQX this past Thursday and Friday. We did the Save Our Stages 34-hour radiothon. This is to save various different rock clubs all throughout the greater Chicagoland area. Rock clubs that help launch the careers of like Nirvana and Pearl Jam and Fall Out Boy and Kanye West and Green Day. Green Day called into the radiothon. Billy Joe Armstrong of the band swore twice in the first 30 seconds.
That doesn't make sense. Him?
It was, but Green Day also donated quite a bit to the cause. Over $36,000 was raised for the staff of those rock venues which are closed. That's another thing about a lot of the rock venues are places where you can see pro wrestling. So think about that too. There's a lot of venues for independent wrestling, and wrestling outside of WWE and AEW may not come back. So live entertainment, you want to support those venues, you want to support those places, even in Pittsburgh, wherever you're watching. If you're in and around Chicago, you ever been to Chicago, you went to Lollapalooza, and then you went to one of those after shows afterwards, it's likely at one of these clubs. So go and check it out. It's civilchicago.com. That's CIVL. Shy, look that up on Google, the Chicago Independent Venue League. You can donate if you want to. A lot of great clubs there, a lot of great clubs that have supported bands that you love, and you don't have to give $20. You can give like maybe $5 or $10 if you can. Don't feel like you have to give a huge amount of money, even if you don't have the time. All right, we will return. We'll be on after Monday Night Raw. That's the next time you'll see us. But of course, you can listen to the podcast and go to the archives, WrestleZone Radio. I've plugged in enough. How many times am I going to do that? I'm so
you can do it a couple more times if you want.
I can do it. I can do one more. Maybe
I don't got to work tomorrow. Go ahead.
plug. All right, we will be back. We've enjoyed wrestling. We hope you've enjoyed wrestling. And remember, the one place for everything WrestleZone is WrestleZone.com. Enjoy wrestling. See you guys.
Bye.
Bye.